Hi, I'm Tyler Esselman.
And I'm Michael Osinski.
And you are listening to This One Goes to 11.
This One Goes to 11. It's our podcast. It's a music-based podcast where we invite someone to talk to us about an album. An album that they think is pretty cool, an album they think is pretty neat, an album they think is pretty rad. An album, they would venture to say, is perfect.
So perfect, in fact, Michael, that 10 out of 10 just isn't good enough.
It is not.
Nope. And I will say that we broke the mold a little bit this week by you did sort of assign this to your friend.
I did a little bit. I kind of imposed this on our guest, but it makes sense. I think
it does. Who are we talking to?
We were talking to Jason Loewith, and Jason Loewith has written, okay, I don't want to say it's the best bio of any guest we've had, but I'm going to say it's pretty killer. Jason Loewith grew up in Fairfield, Connecticut, about 60 miles from New York City, and took the train in on weekends with his family to see shows every few months. He inherited his father's love of figures, working part-time jobs as a bank teller in high school and a nonprofit company bookkeeper as an adult. And he inherited his mother's dedication to Jewish causes, serving as chair of his college's Committee for Soviet Jewry, on the International Board of United Synagogue Youth, working at the Jewish Home for the Aged, and almost studying to become a rabbi. Theater intervened, taking him from Brown University in Rhode Island to Santa Barbara, Los Angeles, New York City, Chicago, and finally the Washington, D.C. region, where he's been for more than a decade. Professionally, he's worked with a lot of famous and infamous people, directed some 40-odd plays, written a handful, managed or produced hundreds of them, and done just about every job there is to do in a theater, through which he's learned the value of a dollar, the importance of honesty, and the fact that you do not put a silk suit in either the washing machine or the dryer. On days off, Jason loves to cook, hang out with his 12 nieces and nephews and several grand nieces and nephews, play Civilization, and listen to music written between 1950 and 1990. He lives in Carter Rock Springs with his husband Ned and his dogs Mortimer and Eliza in a mid-century modern home that's majority owned by Sandy Spring Bank. Jason has been the artistic director of Olney Theater Center since 2013. And I know him from the now defunct Next Theater Company in Evanston, Illinois, where worked together for a year before I moved to Philly.
Just such rich detail. I mean, it's of course it's long, but boy, is it good. It's a good bio.
I wish more artist bios were like that, as opposed to like listing all of the credits of like, oh, I won this award and I worked with this person and all of that.
Which,
like,
hey,
I mean, that's
no issue with those either. But this was a dimension. He added a dimension to it that I found very, very enjoyable.
Refreshing, even downright refreshing,
personal and funny. And he is all those things as well. I think everyone's going to really enjoy this. It's our last regular episode of the season, and if you don't know this album, I think you're in for a treat, because it will change your life.
A fantastic way to end our season and to end our year. Why don't we just get right to it? Let's get right to the episode.
Let's shall.
Jason Loewith, welcome to This One Goes to 11.
Woo! I'm so happy to be here. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Tyler, for letting me on this amazing podcast.
Aww.
Well, we're glad you're here. Dear listeners, just so you know, this is a bit of a special case this time. Normally, we ask people to nominate a few albums that they consider to be perfect, but this year, in celebration of the holidays and knowing my own personal history with Jason here, I told him that he was going to be talking about this week's album. And you know what? I feel like it's our last episode, our last like regular episode of the year and the season. So I feel like we can do that.
Be special. It's the holidays.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but just so that our listeners know, Jason, please tell us, what album hath thou brought before This One Goes to 11 tribunal?
I am so happy to be nominating, even though I was forced to do it, A Charlie Brown Christmas by Vince Guaraldi.
Which is funny that particular, the Linus and Lucy is on this album, even though it really has nothing to do with Christmas. It's just, it's the Peanuts song.
It was the hook. It was the hook that got him the gig.
You can't go through a Christmas period and not hear some of these songs at least once, right?
You need to. It will put you in the right spirit of the holidays. That's what I find.
Well, before we get too deep into the album itself, and then the greater context of it as well, we have everybody's favorite segment, and it's going to be everybody's favorite Yuletide segment now. It's the beginner's guide to A Charlie Brown Christmas by the Vince Guaraldi Trio in 60 seconds. This week, so lovingly brought to us by none other than one Mr. Michael Osinski, the Santa Claus of music, the Kris Kringle of badass tunes. Michael, are you prepared for your Yuletide task?
I am, and just so you know, Jason, before you start making your case and we evaluate your case, you get to evaluate me on this. So whatever scale you choose, I mean, we prefer to be holiday themed, of course, but you could always just go, from 1 to 10, A to F. You could award me in like holly leaves or I don't know, snowmen or whatever. It's up to you.
Sprigs of mistletoe.
Yes.
If I could roll my R's, I would. If I could roll my R's like that. So, you say it again.
Sprigs of mistletoe.
Thank you. Very good. You get Tyler. You get 5 sprigs.
Excellent. Okay, we're off to a strong start, everybody. I get 5 sprigs of mistletoe. Sprigs of mistletoe. Great. But Michael, if you're ready, we have 1 minute on the clock.
Oh, I'm ready.
Then, on your mark, get set, go.
Vincent Anthony Guaraldi was born in San Francisco in 1928 into a musical family, with 2 of his uncles heading jazz big bands. After college and a brief stint in the U.S. Army, he made his first recorded debut as a pianist and group leader in 1955, thanks to Fantasy Records, the record label which later screwed him over by paying him only 5% of his album sales. His first mainstream success came with the jazz instrumental Cast Your Fate to the Wind in 1962, which attracted the attention of TV producer Lee Mendelson. And in 1965, Guaraldi and his trio provided the soundtrack for the television special A Charlie Brown Christmas, making his music synonymous with Charles Schulz's Peanuts cartoons and characters going forward. It features original compositions alongside recordings of Christmas classics, including an intentionally off-key version of Hark the Herald Angels Sing, because Guaraldi wanted the kids to sound like kids. The album has been added to the National Recording Registry by the Library of Congress and been certified 5 times platinum, making it the second best-selling jazz album of all time, behind Miles Davis's Kind of Blue.
Holy moly, Michael.
Damn, that was good.
Some of your finest work, my friend.
So how many sprigs? I can't do it. How many sprigs? Thank you. How many of those do I get?
Damn, that was really good. I didn't realize I was going to be evaluating you, but it comes naturally to me. Evaluating people and being judgmental. So awesome. I'm going to give you 4.5 out of 5 sprigs, and I'm going to tell you why you missed the half sprig, which is really just like a leaf. Because you didn't mention that Guaraldi died tragically early, just as he was just came out of playing a gig. And what Charlie Brown special was he working on when he died? Anybody?
Oh, I don't know that, actually.
I don't know.
I can tell you. It's Arbor Day, Charlie Brown.
Oh,
wait.
Yeah,
really?
That
would have been my favorite of them. I know.
And it's Arbor. They were like the Peanuts specials were like the Marvel movies of the 1960s and 70s, right?
You get 600. You get 600 tree saplings for that one. 600 tree saplings for pulling that out. Good for you, Jason.
Well, now I realize. Now I had 5 seconds. I could have said how he died. I did see that he died like 47. I think wasn't 47. He like 47?
Yeah.
Just unreal. That's so young.
Yeah. When Vince Guaraldi was my age, he had been dead for 7 years.
That's a good way of putting it. All right, 600 more points for that. Jeez.
Happy holidays, everybody.
The holidays can be a dark time for a lot of people, so it's true,
So, Jason, before we dive into the album itself, we like to ask our guests, what is your relationship with music? Or what has your relationship with music been? What is it now? Just like sort of a, general, broad-based question.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you asked, because I'm probably one of the more expert people that you've had on your podcast.
I love that you claim it. Claim that. Yes.
Yeah, claim it. I was born in 1968, and my knowledge of music sort of goes back to the dark ages,
Mm.
and pretty much ends around 1988.
Okay.
Anything after 1988, I'm pretty much not aware of. If you were to ask me, like, for example, so 1981, I received from my father a Walkman, Sony Walkman. This is what we did when old people like me to listen to music on our own before we could, Spotify and CDs and anything. Like, we had tape cassettes, and my father gave me 2 cassettes that he thought to start me off, and this pretty much tells you all you need to know. They were Neil Diamond's The Jazz Singer, which I'm sure that you know about. You have to look it up, you have to listen to it. We're coming to America, bum, bum, bum. Amazing.
Yes.
And Kenny Rogers' Greatest Hits. So this was me while all of my friends were like getting into, I don't know, well, certainly they had, it was Journey and Asia and I don't know, whatever else, and Led Zeppelin and all of that. And I was like Kenny Rogers. So when you ask me about the music that I listen to, and my father listened to WEZN Stereo 100, easy listening music. So I am a stunted shrub of a music lover.
All right, sorry. There's points for that. 3,000 points for a stunted shrub of a music lover.
It started with a mistletoe. I have. I don't know what happened, but I'm. Ask me about Simon and Garfunkel. I can tell you all about all of their albums. Peter, Paul, and Mary. I'm on it for you. But Taylor Swift sounds to me like a character from Fiddler on the Roof.
Wow, I've not. Okay, more points for that. 600 points for Taylor on the Roof. That is not an assessment I've heard yet, but I really see what you mean. And it's not necessarily a bad thing either, if we're honest. Like, that's...
I own it, and I make a little hay of it when I can. And I have something like 15 nieces and nephews, and they love the fact that I know nothing about contemporary music, as does my husband. He thinks it's very funny.
Well, did you learn any instruments?
Thank you for granting me some legitimacy. I studied classical piano for 10 years. So I definitely have an appreciation for music, and you're going to love the name of my piano teacher. Her name was Beverly Steubenhouse.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
She was convinced that I was going to become a concert pianist. I was her best pupil ever. And because of this, she would only give me classical music to play. And I'm like, but my friends are listening to Billy Joel. Can you let me learn Piano Man? And she's like, no. I mean, she didn't have an accent, but I remember her with one. No, you must learn Chopin. No, you must learn the Beethoven. Wow, I don't know what accent that was. In any case,
were you the kind of person that was learning classical piano and like had very strong opinions about classical music? Like, was that, or was it just a thing you did?
No, I did. I did sort of really fall in love. My godfather was he introduced me to classical music early as a kid. We lived in about an hour outside of New York in Connecticut, and he took me to the New York Philharmonic and Metropolitan Opera, and that gave me a real appreciation for an interest in classical music. I never got into, the musicology of it. I think because I stopped when I was about 15 and 16 and ended up going into theater, which, let me tell you, Beverly Steubenhouse was very upset about.
Was she? Sorry, Bev.
I stopped practicing. Sorry, Bev. And I stopped practicing. And by the way, her son, I don't know if you even remember this television show, L.A. Law. Her son composed the music to L.A. Law. And she was always telling me that, like, if I blah, 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 you could be like my son in L.A. Law. But I would have loved to have studied actually musicology. I think I would have, what I honestly would have done, I had a real intellectual crush on Leonard Bernstein. And I think if I could pursue another career from the start right now, it would to try to be a conductor.
That would be a heck of a life, wouldn't it? You just see these conductors that are still out there sort of the David Robertsons and the Gustavo Dudamels and all them, and you think, you're a dying breed. It's an amazing thing
Totally
to
true.
see those guys still hewing careers out of conducting orchestras and symphonies.
But one thing that I do love about them all, that is the male conductors, they all have great fucking hair. Oh, sorry.
No, you can say that. They have great fucking hair.
Yeah.
They have great hair, and I don't. And so I would have loved to be, like Gustavo Dudamel, as you say, and Leonard Bernstein, he had it, and they all do. Even the women, Marin Alsop. Anyway, I'm sure that's part of why I love Charlie Brown Christmas, because there is a reverence for the classics involved.
So let me ask about the jazz of it all. Were you a jazz head?
I was not a jazz head. I've always loved jazz, and I loved what you said about Miles Davis being the only other album that has sold more copies than a jazz album, which I did not know. Yeah, no, I'm certainly, Miles Davis and Coltrane and all, and Duke Ellington. I think even the older, even before Miles Davis, really is sort of where my jazz love is.
So then, how did you discover this album? I mean, I know at some point we will talk about why I know you for this album, but how did you discover it?
So since you asked me about being on this podcast talking about my love of Charlie Brown Christmas, I've been racking my brains about when I discovered it, and I honestly cannot tell you. I mean, all right, so this came out in '65. I was born in '68, so obviously when I was very, very little, I would have watched Charlie Brown Christmas at home, and I was a huge fan of Peanuts. I had all the Peanuts books as a kid. I corresponded with Charles Schultz.
Wow.
In fact, yes, I was looking for his letter back to me and I couldn't find it in preparation for this, sad to say. I wrote to him asking why Charlie Brown was always sad, and he sent me a whole bunch of drawings of Charlie Brown happy.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was always a huge Charlie Brown fan and Peanuts fan, and I'm sure that I saw a little bit of my loser self as a child in him, always trying to kick the football and connecting. So I honestly can't remember. It was certainly after the advent of CDs it was probably one of the first CDs that I purchased. That was when I discovered it, and as Mike will tell you, every year on my birthday, that's when we begin listening to it.
I was going to say, tell them when your birthday is. That's the key thing.
August 24th. And whenever I'm really stressed out, even before that during the year. But that I do secretly. It's only publicly that I do it, like for anybody else to hear that I can listen to it. And once a year I will tend to, every couple of years I'll find it somewhere on a streaming service and watch it again. Because come on.
They're all on Apple TV now.
That's right. They're all on Apple TV. I did rewatch Great Pumpkin.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. I did the Thanksgiving one last week.
Did you?
It's really, yeah.
I have not watched that one in a while. He's like, I mean, we'll talk about it, but like what he does to swing a waltz, right?
Yeah.
Like,
it should be illegal, probably. Like, there's a chance what he does to swing a waltz should be punishable by something. I don't know what.
Have they restored the Peanut specials? Because I was just home and we watched The Grinch was on, and they've digitally restored it, and I hated it. Like,
oh, really?
The fact that like you can see how it's been digitally restored, and I'm like, no. Like, let's go back to like hand drawn, like everything put together, like, and it feels a little bit like there's a little bit of a hiccup. And because of it's all digitally restored, it feels like all the Who's in Whoville are like on speed, because as they move from one place to another, they zip through. Have they done the same with Peanuts? Like, is Charlie Brown like actually like running down to kick the football, or has he still got a little bit of a drag to him?
Absolutely. At least as I have watched, I have not noticed any. I've not noticed Charlie Brown on speed.
Not as noticeable as all that. I mean, it was beautiful. The whatever versions they have on Apple TV are absolutely gorgeous. Like the contrast in the color. I mean, you forget. I think sometimes, at least I take for granted how genius the whole palette of that world is.
Right. But I think, but I mean, certainly as one reads about it and thinks about it, the success of the Charlie Brown franchise animated franchise on television was not at all assured without this music. I really do believe it. I think that had Vince Guaraldi not had this sort of crazy brainwave about Linus and Lucy and that tune that we all know so well.
Yeah.
I don't think that it would have, and this was certainly the first time that anything animated had been done, A, without a laugh track, which is shocking, weird, like, what was it? Animated something with a laugh track, how bizarre. And B, the incorporation of jazz, which now you can actually hear in a lot of the scores for a lot of animated specials, in addition to more contemporary music, but it was the first time leaving, was it Mel Blanc and all the Warner Brothers, all those Warner Brothers cartoons really relied heavily on, frankly, classical music and classically inspired music.
Yeah.
But not at all the case once Vince Guaraldi and the Charlie Brown franchise began.
Yeah.
Would not have been successful otherwise. He obviously tapped into something.
You get 9,000 points for The Peanuts Aren't the Peanuts without the music. It's a strong point in your favor.
Do you have a running total of my points, by the way? Because I feel like it's a lot.
Yeah, I have your points on do I have a total? No. Do I liberally smack down points whenever I want? Yes. 'Tis the season for giving, my friend, That's how it works.
I was an A student in school, so I always like to know where I stand.
You're not the first to express something like that.
Yeah, this is a running theme with a lot of our guests, I think.
It is.
Oh yeah, they want to be best. Yeah, they want to get an A.
Or they want a rubric, and unfortunately, we just can't provide that. So,
nor should we. I don't think.
It's funny though, talking about it being a jazz album. As I was putting together the little about the album, I never think of this as a jazz album because I just never think of it as jazz because it's just the Peanuts music. I don't, for some reason it feels like it just defies genre to me, even though it is clearly jazz music that has been composed for this. It's like if I had to put it, because if you go to a store, and we've had a long ongoing conversation this year about genre and what that even means, but I would put this in the Christmas section of the media play or the Tower Records, but no, it is a jazz album. I forget that.
If you listen to that first that piece of his that really was his breakout piece,
Cast Your Fate to the Wind.
Cast your fate to the wind, throw your cares to the wind. That tells you where I am at the moment. If you listen to that, you will hear Charlie Brown. You will hear, and if you listen to almost anything he did, even the stuff that he did with Bola Sete and the real samba experiments and the bossa nova experiments, and frankly, if you listen to that Linus and Lucy, that little bridge has just a little bit of samba. That it's just like a little bit of samba. There's little bits. Anyway, it's throughout all of his music. So really, you could say that Peanuts is Guaraldi, and Guaraldi is Christmas, because apparently all the executives at Coca-Cola sponsored it, right? The Charlie Brown Christmas. It was Coca-Cola was I don't know, they were throwing money away, and they thought it was money to be thrown away, and they had no idea. They thought it was going to be a failure when they first screened it. And then obviously they got more money, and he went from trio to quartet to quintet and so on. And so as you listen to later iterations of Linus and Lucy, which was in almost all of the Charlie Brown pieces, the Charlie Brown specials, he's adding the flute, he went into this crazy vibraphone period. I don't think it's as good. I think the simplicity of what's on that Charlie Brown album, just those three instruments.
Totally.
Well, we should have our listeners listen to a track from this. If they haven't heard at least one song from this special, then I would like to know which rock they have crawled out from under to listen to this episode. But why don't you tell us which song have you chosen as your standout track from the album, and why'd you pick it?
It was not easy to do. There are only three tracks on the album that are not covers, or shall we say not covers, adaptations of classic pieces. Linus and Lucy, Christmas is Here, and Skating, all of which are great. But I have to go with Christmas Time Is Here for many reasons. Number one, it was originally intended to be just instrumental. And Bill Mendelsohn was like, no, it needs to have lyrics. And he wrote the lyrics in 15 minutes on a napkin and made a bunch of kids do it. And so that Christmas time is here, like the worst lyrics ever, but we all love it. So that's number one. And number two, if you're a follower of Arrested Development, which God, I hope everybody who's listening to this podcast is, you know that wah, 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 wah is like the cue for disaster. So the fact that that song can put so much joy in my heart every time I hear it, and also be the cue for disaster. Why I love this song.
Those are very. I'm going to give you 12,000 points. 12,000 points for those reasons, and also just state. And I'm going to speak for us, Michael, that this is a pro Arrested Development podcast.
Yeah, this is. Yeah. You no shame.
No shame about that.
Well, let's give it a listen.
That's the end of part one. If you access this episode via our YouTube playlist, you're about to hear our guest's standout track. If you'd like to jump ahead to part two, you'll find a link in the description of this episode.